History suggests that America has had enough. She's about to turf the reigning rot. America is no longer recognizable. Measures of national happiness and pride in being an American have fallen to record lows. The government is gridlocked, spending is out of control, and the health of the nation is in peril. Popular trust in virtually every American institution, from businesses and governments to churches and newspapers, keeps falling to new lows. Public debts soar, the middle class shrinks, welfare dependencies deepen, and cultural wars worsen by the year. But America is about to change dramatically. She will clean house and restore her people's indomitable spirit and limitless ingenuity. And the coming 2024 election will be a watershed moment when America turns the page, because 4 more years of dysfunction is no longer tolerable. The impending signs of change. From here forward, Biden and Trump are stalled. Their numbers will slowly and steadily erode. Kennedy's numbers will steadily rise. The Gallup polls show that between 49% and 65% of Americans have already left either the Democrat or Republican Party and now identify as independent. The chance that either party will attract new voters is pretty much close to zero. The fourth turning will happen in 2025, a forecast of cataclysmic change. In 1997, historians William Strauss and Neil Howe wrote a national bestseller, The Fourth Turning, an American Prophecy. What the cycles of history tell us about America's next rendezvous with destiny. Sometime before 2025, America will pass through a great gate in history commensurate with the American Revolution, the Civil War, and the twin emergencies of the Great Depression and World War II. Well, here we are. Their prescient forecast of America and her destiny is about to unfold. And with any luck, it may happen without their dire warnings of possible violence. It's all happened before. Strauss and Howe write, at the core of modern history lies a remarkable pattern. Over the past 5 centuries, Anglo-American society has entered a new era, a new turning point every 2 decades or so. At the start of each turning point, people change how they feel about themselves, the culture, the nation, and the future. These turnings, well, they come in cycles of 4, with each turning representing about 20 to 25 years. Now, the 4 turnings span the length of a long human life, roughly 80 to 100 years, a unit of time the ancients called the saculum. Now, together, the 4 turnings of the saculum comprise history's seasonal rhythm of growth, maturation, entropy, and destruction. Now, beginning with the Wars of the Roses, that was 1458 to 1487, and ending with the millennial saculum of today, the authors demonstrate that roughly every 20 to 25 years represents a new era, a new turning. And each one comes with its own identifiable mood, which always surprises people. The current millennial saculum started in 1946, it should end in 2026. It began with the American high, which was 1946 to 1964. Now, in the current saculum, the first turning was the American high of the Truman, Eisenhower, and Kennedy presidencies. It was an upbeat era, an era of strengthening institutions and weakening individualism. A new civic order implants, and the old values regime decays. As World War II wound down, no one predicted that America would soon become so confident, institutionally muscular, yet conformist and spiritually complacent. But that's what happened. Next was the consciousness revolution. That was 1964 to 1984. The second turning is an awakening, a passionate era of spiritual upheaval when the civic order comes under attack from a new values regime. It stretched from the campus revolts of the mid-1960s to the tax revolts of the early 1980s. The Culture Wars, 1984 to 2005. This was the third turning. Now, the third turning is an unraveling, a downcast era of strengthening individualism and weakening institutions. When the old civic order decays and the new values regime implants. As the author said in 1997, this era began with Reagan's mid-1980s Morning in America, and it will expire around early 2000, 8 or 10 years from now. Amid the glitz of the early Reagan years, no one predicted that the nation was entering an era of national drift and institutional decay. But that's where we are. The Millennial Crisis, 2005 to 2024. This is the fourth and final turning. The fourth turning is a decisive era of secular upheaval in which the values regime propels the replacement of the old civic order with a new one. The fourth turning is history's great discontinuity. It ends one epoch and begins another. History is seasonal and winter is coming. As history has shown, a fourth turning can be long and difficult, brief but severe, or perhaps, with any luck, mild. All the way back in 1997, Strauss and Howe predicted that the millennials would face off against the baby boomers during a crisis era around 2020 for a restructured new set of circumstances around 2026. Making this prediction way back in 1997 appears to be an incredibly bold prediction, but one they argue is supported by history and bears uncanny parallels to America's past. Howe and Strauss argued that the last fourth turnings culminated in World War II, the Civil War, and the American Revolution. The next crisis era would involve millennials and boomers fighting over the shape of the world to come. And the catalyst event would begin around 2005, the climax around 2020, and a resolution by 2026. Kennedy will be the great disruptor and the catalyst of the fourth turning. Pippa Malmgren said recently, Kennedy is doing amazingly well. There is a groundswell, unlike anything I've seen since the young came out for Obama. But this is about a bigger, much bigger scale. Pippa Malmgren, economist and former special assistant to George W. Bush, has a knack for reading the tea leaves. She argues that America seldom chooses the early frontrunners and something unexpected propels the dark horse to the White House. In a 2015 opinion piece for the Evening Standard, Malmgren wrote, Trump has a very good chance of winning. Trump is part of a global phenomenon. The debt burden has brought immense pain. The lack of growth, of jobs, of hope, and beliefs in the future has worn the world down. Everyone is disenchanted with the old faces and casting around for someone new, anyone new. Maybe the only way to break the disastrous deadlock in politics and fiscal affairs is to throw a bomb into it. That bomb is called Trump. Every presidency is associated with a new technology. As Malmgren explained on the David McWilliams podcast, the moment Bill Clinton won was when he played the saxophone on Saturday Night Live. Obama won on YouTube. Trump won on Twitter at a time when people didn't get how Twitter really worked. Two particular technologies are helping Kennedy. One is podcasting, the other, Instagram. I would say the iconic moment for Kennedy was when Joe Rogan had him on for 3 hours and 30 million people listened to it. A vastly larger audience than you'll ever get on mainstream media. Podcasts are more of an elegant, civilized, nuanced medium where you can get into detail and show your breadth. I would add Instagram, where you can see what the Kennedy campaign is about. And the kids are all watching it. Well, meaning anyone under 30. A week ago, I was chatting with my 25-year-old hairdresser, and she asked me what I was working on. I said I was working on this piece about how Kennedy would win the presidency in 2024. I expected to hear her surprise. Instead, I heard her say, "Yeah, I know he will." "What?" I asked. "Why do you think that?" "Oh," she said, "I don't follow politics at all. In fact, I don't even know who's running. But Kennedy keeps popping up on my Instagram." Each generation sees the world through a different lens. From the perspective of the millennials, the boomers have feathered their nests with houses, investments, benefits, and old age security. And at the same time, the remaining generations are getting stuck with a bill. They get inflation, high interest rates, a healthcare system that's going broke supporting elderly boomers, and the ticking time bomb of skyrocketing national debt. Ever since the great financial meltdown of 2008, America has been groping for change. But as long as the boomers held the reins of power, any shift from the status quo would never happen. So, here we are, nearly 10 years after the Trump experiment, and we have the same problems, but they're bigger, much bigger. The American public, well, indeed the world, knows that it cannot continue with the rot governing our societies. As significant a catalyst as Trump was, he didn't change things. He couldn't. When the system is dysfunctional, the governing label of Democrat or Republican becomes irrelevant, as 4 years of Trump, followed by 4 years of Biden, have shown. The ceding of power. The boomers have had their day and made a mess of things. Gen X, millennials, and Gen Z are taking control. And they see the world from a very different perspective. Traditionally, no independent or third-party candidate has done well in the U.S. presidential election. But that's about to change. The Gallup polls are showing something we've never seen before in American history. Americans are perfectly comfortable voting for an independent. In fact, polls have shown that 70% of voters prefer that Democratic and Republican nominees weren't named Biden and Trump. Under the Constitution, winning the presidency takes 270 electoral college votes. At present, Trump and Biden are deadlocked at about 35% of the popular vote each. But those numbers will prove to be soft. Democrat and Republican members may swear allegiance to their party, but once in the ballot booth, things tend to change, putting things in perspective. 34. That may very well be the symbolic magic number in the November presidential election, wrote Douglas McKinnon in an opinion piece in The Hill. In what is shaping up to become a three-person contest between President Joe Biden, former President Donald Trump, and independent candidate Robert F. Kennedy Jr., the question becomes, which candidate can garner 34% of the popular vote or higher? The Democrats suggest that Kennedy's chances of winning the presidency are zero. But then again, in 2015, they assured the nation that Trump's chances of defeating Hillary Clinton were also zero. Why has Kennedy been blacklisted by traditional media? Because he vows to clean house, to put an end to big business running government. He promises to make pharmaceutical advertising on television illegal, damning the river of money Big Pharma pays to traditional media, promises to hasten its pending demise. Consequently, Kennedy has been painted by big media as either an anti-vaxxing nutcase or else he's studiously ignored. Ultimately, however, whatever big media does or doesn't do to thwart Kennedy's presidential chances really won't matter all that much, because those who will vote for him don't watch traditional media anyway. Who is RFK Jr.? As Scott Bennett wrote in the Fair Observer, the perception of many Democrats is that RFK Jr. is an anti-vax nutjob. His unorthodox views on the subject are like catnip to the millions who listen to Joe Rogan, but absolutely anathema to mainstream NSNBC watching Democrats. But then again, Kennedy has not actively sought the approval of traditional Democrats anyway. Joe Rogan began his 3-hour Spotify podcast interview with RFK with this: "When I heard of you in the past, before I read your book and before I'd met you, I had no information on you. But there was this narrative that you were anti-vax, that you believed in pseudoscience, and you were kind of loony. I took it at face value because that's what everybody said. And I'll say this, if you listen to a Kennedy interview, you'll quickly see that he's anything but a nutcase. I'm not suggesting that you'll agree with him or that you should agree with him, but you'll have to admit that he's articulate, has encyclopedic knowledge of events, and has a sterling track record of fighting cronyism, cleaning up the environment, and successfully taking on big organizations that willfully pollute the environment." RFK's vision for America.
We are told today that our nation is hopelessly divided. But I found something different as I travel this country. I have witnessed an upwelling of optimism that I've never seen before. Something is stirring in us that says it doesn't have to be this way. And so I've come here today to declare our independence from the tyranny of corruption, which robs us of affordable lives, our belief in the future, and our respect for each other. But to do that, I must first declare my own independence. Independence from the Democratic Party and from all other political parties. I haven't made this decision lightly. It's very painful for me to let go of the party of my uncles, my father, my grandfather, and both of my great-grandfathers. From this day on, I am with my country. I'm going to make that same pledge to you today so that I can stand before you, as every leader should stand before you, free of partisan allegiance, free from the backroom deals, a servant only to my conscience, to my Creator, and to you. Every president enters office promising to unite the nation and to work with people from the other party across the aisle. None of them ever does it. They can't. They're already chosen a side. Well, I'm not going to have that problem. I'm going to build coalitions from both sides of the aisle. And except for the small minority of public officials who are actually corrupt, I'm going to tell you this secret. They too want liberation from the system that has captured them. And isn't that ultimately what we all want? Liberation from a system that robs us of our wealth, our health, our hope, our patriotism, our ideals, our freedoms, and ultimately our sense of ourselves as a good and capable people. Is healing our divided nation possible? Let's go take back our country.
What are JFK's broad policies? Foreign policy. We should be leading with ideas, not with bullets, and not with our dollars. We need that money at home to build our own economy and restore our health. No more forever wars. On crime and punishment. Everybody who's in prison on minor marijuana charges has to be let out. This is just crazy. The prison system is run on a profitability basis, so you get paid to have more prisoners. The environment. A critical issue in America has been clean water. And that's one of the most hardcore things he talks about. He wants no more chemicals in our water. He is a true environmentalist. Everybody else can talk about environmental protection, but he's the only one that's really done the work. Government taxation. He believes in supporting entrepreneurs because, well, they're building our future economy. Let's not tax them too hard, but let's end the practice of major conglomerates paying zero tax. Libertarian views. He believes the government should leave people alone once they get home, which means the invasive approach to abortion, drug use, and homeopathic drug use. The government needs to protect the rights of individuals to do what they want with their own lives. Why Kennedy will win the presidential race in 2024. America knows that another 4 years of gridlock, stalemate, and corruption are no longer tolerable. Whether it's Trump and the Republicans or Biden and the Democrats, it won't make the slightest difference, since it's the machinery of government that's completely broken. For the first time in history, America will be comfortable voting for an independent. America loves an underdog. Kennedy's guerrilla campaign isn't being funded by the big institutions. It's driven by small donations from individuals. Although he was born into a prestigious, wealthy family, he has suffered extraordinary hardships in losing his father and his uncle at a young age. As a former drug user, he was arrested at one point for heroin possession. Walking away from the privileged life in the Washington scene, he became a fisherman on the Hudson River. Realizing the river was nearly dead because of corporations dumping toxic waste, over the next 20 years, he and other fishermen started campaigning. 20 years later, Hudson River was restored to health. Americans, like no other people, relate to triumph over adversity. Kennedy battled his demons and took back control of his life. What are the signs that say the fourth and great turn is coming? No one in America can be happy with the current state of affairs, with the stalemate in government. Whether we believe in the fourth turning forecast or not, America cannot continue its current course. America, being what it is, can no longer allow the corruption and dysfunction that's making her sick. The reins of power must change hands, no matter how much the governing boomers try to resist. So buckle up. We're about to witness her restoration.